Hey everyone, it's the Amazing Race recap on RHAP. It is I, Mama Rat, Jessica Liese, and of course, with me as always is going to be Baby Rat Mike Bloom, and we're going to ski around the world while we do some yoga and talk about everything that happened on the Amazing Race. And of course, we have a special guest this week. But first, before we get into that, I want to introduce the incomparable Mixmaster Mike. How's it going, Mike?
I'm doing well. Jess, I'll forgive you that you called me baby something, considering you know the fear that I have. But listen, I'm like Sean, right? The other side of fear is life, and I am living for this episode because if we thought the mess left with Anthony and Bailey, nope, the mess is here to stay on Amazing Race 36.
There's so much mess. And I love it when multiple teams bring the mess. But of course, with us this week to talk about everything that happened and to give us some super fan perspective, some Amazing Race veteran perspective, but probably not very much mess perspective. Curiously enough, we have from season 27, we have Justin. How's it going?
What's going on? I'm glad to be back. It's been like, I don't know, 7 years since I was on the show.
Been nearly 10 seasons, man.
Jesus. What's going on? And then Mike, you weren't even here, I don't think, when we did it the first time. Right?
I was not even born yet. I didn't become birthed into the world as a baby rat, but super excited. Of course, you are, as Jess said, a team that very much dominated over the course of season 27. So maybe outside of like going for that fast forward on a super windy day, there wasn't a lot to nitpick with. And
it wasn't windy where we were.
Yeah, but it's going to be so much fun to talk through this with you because I also know that you do some Amazing Race talk on your own end as well. So I know you're raring to go, doubly so this week.
Let's do it. This one had a lot of things that irked me in this episode, but it's the Amazing Race, and they did a little rewind, and we'll get into it.
Yeah, I love it when the first thing that we come into the podcast with is there are a few things that irked me. I feel like that's good energy to bring in. I'm going to have a lot of talking points for sure.
Yeah.
I bet I can make some guesses though.
Oh, I'm pretty sure you can guess all of them. I don't doubt that at all. Oh, these people. What were they thinking?
Man, I love it though, because I feel like this cast in particular, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, but this is the most single-digit season Amazing Race cast we have had in a really long time. Like they are making the mistakes of people from 2004.
Got you. Oh, I was wondering where you were going with that, but yeah, there's way too many mistakes, especially for people who claim to be super fans.
Yeah, I wonder, maybe these are super duper fans that only they're like, the Dan Heaton purists that only watch the first 10 seasons and compare everything back to that.
Well, if you watch the Amazing Race first 10 seasons, then you haven't watched the best seasons yet. So you might want to keep going because unlike Survivor, the first 10 seasons of Amazing Race were not the best seasons, especially if you go back and rewatch them. It's like, slow and just, it was great at the time because it was so new and fresh. It's like Race Around the World for $1 million, but fast forwards on every leg.
Yeah.
And you got to deal with people like Jonathan and Victoria and just the slime that was back then. There's just so much slime.
People in the 2000s were worse on reality TV. Like they were just bigger jerks all around.
Yeah, you don't see a new Johnny Fairplay anymore because
Well, there's only one of those, thank God.
Disgusting.
But I remember rewatching the season 7 premiere like fairly recent, like maybe 5 years ago, and being shocked that the first 30 minutes of the episode they do not leave the airport.
Yeah.
Airport drama.
But
yeah.
Well, that's it. You don't know what you've got till it's gone, Now we're like, give us 30 minutes out of a 90-minute episode of airport drama. But instead, yeah, listen, we talked the first couple of weeks about how it was a little bit of a slower start from my perspective. And look, I'm not coming in to say that like this is not another situation where there's a gaggle of 5 teams that are all pretty much finishing in the same order, just kind of like cycling around each other. But at least we got a little bit of variance. And look, beggars are certainly choosers, cannot be choosers in this regard but as someone who again likes to see teams change place, the whole idea of a race to begin with, getting to see what like Sunny and Busy did, and I guess by comparison what happened to Michelle and Sean to a certain extent, I really enjoyed it. And yes, it's still only 2 tasks, but if we're sort of sticking with just this new normal of what Amazing Race 36 has to be, at least I'm sort of enjoying the ride, hanging out with these entertaining, messy ass people that occasionally can do really, really well at the Amazing Race.
Yes, as you saw with Sunny and Busy, how they were just lost, gone. Everybody looked and was like, "All right, we already know who's going home." And then they got to the challenge, nailed it first try, gone. Just that's what makes the Amazing Race great. When they could have tasks that allow teams with a skill set to come in, dominate because of their skill set, and move on. Whereas other people who don't know how to get general directions, aka 20-something-year-olds who have grown up with Google Maps their whole life and never actually saw a paper map, they're like, oh, it's so. There's one checkered building. I was banging my head against the ground. It was one checkered building, and it's not even like a hidden. It's directly in front of you. This massive checkered building. The first thing you do on the map, you look at the checkered building, and you're okay. I'm here. It took teams like a half hour, it seemed, to figure out where they were on the map.
Justin, not everyone can aspire to be landscape architects like Sunny and Busy, okay? They're not used to finding certain landmarks.
I mean, I didn't even know that those little circles were like landscape. I wouldn't even put that together.
Well, here's a question for you then, Justin. Did you do a lot of practicing before you went on the show? Did you do a lot of practicing reading maps?
Yes. Well, I actually I had to teach Diana more because I was a nerd and I was a Boy Scout and I have my orienteering merit badge. And I actually used to be a summer camp counselor and I used to teach that merit badge to kids. So orienteering felt very natural to me. I didn't take a course like Penn did, but I did get certified when I was younger. And, you know, I would take Diana to a place, we'd get a map and we'd be in a stick shift car and I'd be like, all right, we're going from here to here. Do you want to drive or do you want to navigate? And she'd like, always want to drive. And I'm like, nah, you're navigating this time. So we would take turns. And ultimately, though, I would have been the navigator. She would have been the driver.
Okay.
Yeah, and I like sort of doing a 2-for-1 there, right? Where you're testing stick shift, but then you're also testing orienteering at the same time. It's basically the closest you'll get to an authentic one-to-one Amazing Race experience outside of apparently running one of Danny's homebrew Amazing Races.
Well, we'll see how that all that plays out, because if you design your own Amazing Race, kind of like I did, you should understand that when you're in a massive place looking for something, that you should pick up on context clues.
Like, but Bloom is the only person here that's never designed their own Amazing Race, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, yeah, not yet as of least.
Well, step it up. What are you waiting for?
I gotta find all the circles in my town. I'll start there. I'll go from there. I'll build a bunch of statues to put around my town in New Jersey. That's a good task.
So what did you guys think about the way it started? They just started, didn't show you any travel. They just started on a paraglide. Just go.
Well, my assumption was that they took off from the previous town on the paragliding, and then they showed up in the next town with all their bags.
That would have been awesome.
That would have, that's got real like Jeff Probst bringing the votes tribal council thing. But I thought this was a really interesting choice, and I definitely wanted to talk about this, like, as the resident, like, game design dweeb, because there's a lot of these tasks on the race, but they're usually in the context of the race. Right. And I love that we're just finally admitting that these tasks are not good for a race. They're good television, but they're bad for racing because they're dependent on luck. They never have any bearing on the order because the order you get there is the order in which you finish. And I know that the Amazing Race is supposed to be the show where you are experiencing these amazing extreme stunts, but there's no strategy and there's no skill. And the only time there's ever any drama around it is if somebody doesn't want to do it. So everybody eventually does it. Pretty much everybody eventually does it. There's like one exception in history where somebody didn't do it. So we all know they're all going to do it. So let's just have them do it and not have it be part of the race. I love that.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, you disagree?
No, yeah, I do. No, okay. I like that they went back and re-edited it to make it seem like it wasn't filmed during the COVID era, right? So that's why they don't show the plane and the travel. But why not start up on top with your 15-minute there? Start and release people in 15-minute intervals. All right, 3 people go. Ready, go. There's enough of the mountain where they can all run and then jump off at the same time or go seconds within seconds of each other. So go. Make that the first part of the race. And then when they land, they got to figure out where the hell they got to go rather than just go down there and everybody go and then we'll wait again and then everybody will get released. It just seems so weird.
That's interesting. So would they still do the departure groups then?
Yeah, but the departure groups start not when they land. Departure groups start. That's how they take off. They take off in their departure groups.
That makes sense. They probably had to stagger them anyway.
Yeah.
We've heard people lose because of their taxi driver. There might be a team that loses because of their paragliding instructor.
Yeah, somebody
Taking the
they're
scenic
running
route.
and they trip and they're like, "Poof," and the paraglide falls down. Yeah, that would have been great TV. But
Well, didn't we also see that happen? Like that happened in I want to say 31, reality TV season where they were in Switzerland, I think, and they did the paragliding.
yeah, they fell, but he kept going at least.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't. The guys just go, just falling. So in general, though, I love they're including this city because if you don't know the history of the city, which is, I wish they would have went into it a little bit more. Like this is one of the most.
They had an in-house expert in Juan. Why didn't he tell more about it?
I mean, this is one of the most dangerous cities in the world, not just in Colombia. This is one of the most dangerous places in the world. And now you're filming there with tourists and this art and hip hop dance. And it's like, what's going on? It gives you a whole different perspective of what Colombia or Medellin could be. Or Medellin, it's Medellin in America. I don't know how you say Medellin. There's no G.
Well, it depends on what Spanish you're speaking.
Medellin.
Yeah.
No idea.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like if you'd said when Amazing Race premiered, if you said eventually they would be racing here, people would have thought you were insane.
It's like our first team not to get kidnapped wins.
Yeah. Yeah. Detour. Do you want to get stabbed or get shot?
Why didn't they have Juan's aunt as a pit stop greeter? That's all I have to say. He was talking about how he was afraid that he'd run into a family member that'd be like, "Oh, come over for dinner." He's like, "I'm sorry, there's a camera crew. It'd be rude for me to keep them waiting." I feel like they should have pulled some strings and like had a family reunion there on the mat.
Well, sure. They've had Phil's dad be the greeter before.
This is the next logical step.
No, I'm all about it, but I think that might have given them the unfair advantage somehow.
If she's at the end of the leg, I don't know.
I heard she did. I think she refused because she didn't want to wear 13 hats on top of her head at the mat.
I don't know. Like,
I didn't know the caps for sale guy was from Colombia.
I was gonna say, I was waiting for the monkeys to come in and take all the caps. That they give away the hats to every team that came by, and so like there were no hats left for Sean and Michelle.
Oh gosh, Sean and Michelle, like, and if you're scared to walk down a hill and drama. But you could just jump off and like, oh, this doesn't even bother me. This is great. This is beautiful.
Well, honestly, that was the first thing I asked him because I had to know. And he said that after he conquered his fear, it was already conquered. So,
I think there's also a difference between like, all right, I'm just gonna run and jump off this thing and then I'll float down versus like, oh my god, I might slip down this muddy hill and there's no guardrail and I might tumble to my doom. We should also mention here, as per usual, Jess and I each had the opportunity to talk with Michelle and Sean, who were a delight. I didn't know this, but they were recognized and were brought into the race because they do a podcast. And so like they had that crisp audio quality, they had the energy levels. And so it was a really great time talking to a team that, listen, admittedly, they'd admit as well, like they were not necessarily the best racers, but they were there for a good time, not a long time.
Which you should have never got on the race.
I mean, 4 weeks in a row.
You should never be cast on the race. Yeah. If you're not there to win, you shouldn't be cast. I'm sorry. If you're not going on the race to win, don't get cast. And that is somewhat of the problem with the new casting director because they're more concerned about, filling the quotas of getting the CBS thing, whatever it is. I don't know. I don't understand. If you could see teams that are there to win, and those teams are winning, and you could see teams who are there to have for the experience, they're never going to win.
It has been a little bit disappointing to have 4 weeks in a row of interviewing teams that are there for the experience.
Yeah.
But on the other hand,
or is that just what losers say?
Well, you gotta explain it to yourself sometime. I mean,
exactly.
What do you say about it, Justin?
Well, listen, I wasn't there for the experience. You know me. I was there to win.
I know.
And you saw how much I was there to win because it broke me. I was broke at the end of that race. I could not stop I was broke, and I'm still broke to this day.
I mean, I can relate. I didn't do a month-long race around the world, but I did lose on the show that I most wanted to compete on, and it was the same thing. It was like, oh, I did it, and now, I'm in there to win. I don't win, and I got to deal with it. But I wonder if it would have been healthier maybe to go in there and be like, I'm just here for the fun.
I mean,
but
to be fair, To be fair to Michelle and Sean, you wouldn't have been talking with them this week for a while, right? Because like they actually made their way to the middle of the pack after just backpacking it for the past 2 legs in that detour. You know, they found the right task at the right time, and then found immediately the wrong task at the wrong time that eliminated them.
Yeah, I thought like if your job is jumping rope, that your cardio would be insane. That didn't happen. So I thought that might have been like one way they could have gotten an advantage over the other teams, which is this insane cardio of jumping rope. It's like it's one of the best exercises in the world.
It's high intensity intervals. It's not a marathon.
Yeah, it's great, but that's what Amazing Race is. It's sprint from here to there, sprint from here to there, sprint from here. It's not a marathon unless you count the whole season as a marathon, but the legs are just sprint from here to there, sprint from here to there. I don't know. I expected more. Well, no, I didn't, because I picked them to be one of the first 3 teams out. So I can't say I expected.
You're almost there, yeah.
Yeah, I got the first 2 teams right. I didn't. So I picked the bottom 3, and the first 4 are, they're my bottom 3. So we got rid of all 3 of them. It's pretty easy to pick out sometimes, but people like Ricky and Caesar are so hard to like predict before the season, like that they're going to be this dynamic of a team, but they work so well together. They never get stressed out. The biggest thing is they 100% completely trust each other, and that's so hard to have on the race, because you could see that with Amber and Vinny. Like Vinny doesn't 100% trust Amber, and Amber doesn't 100% trust Amber. So you could kind of see that affecting them.
I feel like Vinny and Amber are kind of the most early season Amazing Race team that we've had in a really long time.
I mean, how many times have they said babe to each other?
A lot.
Listen, if you watch them in the car, though, you could tell that they've been to some sort of couples therapy, or he's read a ton of books.
They're using the I statements.
Listen, promo misleading is promo misleading. Where we got last week of like they finally reached their breaking point. It was clearly a much different situation where, not to say that like Vinny was certainly instigating Amber a little bit with like consistently saying you're too slow, we need to catch up, etc. But the storyline was less so about like, look what a jerk Vinny was in the way he talks to his girlfriend, and more so like, yeah, she has a lot of self-doubt issues, and in that moment he wasn't being supportive of her. And then you go to the card, to your point, where he's like, yeah, I'm sorry, I know that wasn't the thing that you want to hear, and I understand my frustration and us wanting to hurry along, but it was my mistake.
That's something I was not able to do on the race, especially because Diana is not some, crybaby meek, just like, I can't do it. She's a Philly tough Philly girl who will give it to you just like you give it to her. So when one of us is up, the other one always matches that intensity, and we're just like, Urgh. But that's what our whole life is. Like the same thing with love. Like when we're like in this intense love, it's intense. Like our feelings are intense, and that's what people saw. And you could see a difference between Vinny and Amber and Justin and Diana. But I'm hoping that they pick it up from here, because I predicted them, and I still predict them to win the race. Because they're the only team who came with 1 backpack, so duh, obviously.
Well, Justin, you gotta explain the 1 backpack thing, because this was like the entire reason I wanted to have you on. Because people are asking about this, and there's a specific reason they did that, and you are claiming responsibility, are you not?
Yes, they listen to my podcast, and I will respect Rob and not mention it here. But
no, you must promote your podcast. We bring on other podcasters so they can promote their podcast.
Yeah, and also your podcasts are much more valuable in preparation for the race than ours.
Yes.
If 100%. You ever want to be in the race, watch the races recap.
Yeah, don't listen to the 2 of us, because Mike and I don't know what we're talking about, and Justin does.
I teach you negative information. You learn less by the time you're done with
do
the
the opposite of what Bloom tells you to do.
You guys are for the entertainment value, and I'm more like the education. I'm more the education.
You're very generous of you to say that we're entertaining.
We're the MTV, you're the PBS.
There you go. Yeah, so 1 backpack is something that ever since my season I've been saying like there's no reason to have it, because by the time you get to leg 5, you're throwing things away anyway. You're throwing away the majority of what's in your pack, because 1, you don't need it. And 2, it's heavy, it's bulky, it gets in the way, it's annoying. So ever since I started my podcast, I've been saying there's no reason to ever pack 2 bags. Pack 1 bag and give it to the person who has the best stamina. And that's all you need to do. Like, Here's if you're ever going on a race, you don't have to bring any cold weather stuff. You know why? Because if it's cold enough, they'll give you pants and jackets and hats and gloves because they have to, because of insurance reasons. So there's your little sneak peek. You don't have to carry all those bulky winter stuff if you do a winter season.
You heard
Never.
it here. Don't bring pants to the Amazing Race.
Oh boy.
You could wear shorts all year round. No, like you really only need 1 or 2 outfits, 2 pair of underwear. I'd go with like 3 or 4 pair of socks, but you don't get a lot of chances to clean your stuff, but nobody cares. Like, who cares if I smell as long as I win Amazing Race?
How many crossword puzzle books should we put in there, Justin? Or are you ditching them like Shalisa did back in the first episode?
I'm hoping she brought that for like, the ride to get there, because if she, come on, and crossword puzzle, that's not going to help you at all, in no shape or form on the race.
Yeah, you need to bring Rebus puzzle books now. That's the solution.
And speaking of Rebus puzzles, what are they? Maybe because I grew up and I watched like classic concentration, because I grew up in the 80s, you know what I mean? Like I watched those type of shows, but it's just this is one of the easiest puzzles I've ever seen in my entire life. The first 2 clues were TH plus E. Okay, thanks. The. And Sunny and Busy, half the time they guessed, didn't guess the.
I am obsessed.
Beautiful.
I am
beautiful.
This is why I watch the show sometimes. It's like, listen, I think that we have all grown a bit more complicated in our discussions about like the exploitation of reality TV, but I'll admit I get my kicks sometimes out of people doing stupid things and saying stupid things. And the fact that they went through 30 plus times and got as far as, to Jess's point, like a Sopian fail about baby rat and mama rat going to HE double hockey sticks and doing some yoga. Like, it was so off base. It was absolutely astounding that clearly they overthought it, didn't think it needed to necessarily be some sort of aphorism. Then when they do think it's an aphorism, they're quoting like Lord of the Rings. They're throwing out all these random phrases.
But why are you reading it backwards? Like, what are we in China? Are we in a country where they spell things from right to left? Like they were going from right to left in like the first 10 tries. Like, what are you doing? It just baffled my mind because I expected so much more from them. I genuinely did. I had that in my top 3 in my preseason rankings. I picked them to finish 3rd as the strong female team, but this makes me seem like when you don't know something, you don't know something. You're just done. So why didn't you switch earlier?
I think they felt like they were close. And I think even the task judge says to them that they're close a couple of times, and they are close.
They're
and then
one
they
word.
They go completely off the page again.
They needed a thesaurus, right? Because initially they
Yeah.
got to the world is smaller than I think. That's the closest they came to it.
Mhm.
They just had to, but then they look at the last picture and they say like, oh, well, that thing looks satanic. Okay, let's go in that sinful direction. And then it goes into like just nonsensical phrases. I think one of my favorites besides Mama Rat and Baby Rat was the earth I find, then I think. Is that an alien catchphrase?
Well, obviously you weren't thinking and you're not on Earth right now. So just rattle your head back up and just go to the other task, which they nailed on their first try.
Yeah. This was like this might have been a Mark and Bopper kind of first try.
Yeah,
but-
this was a Denise and James Earl doing a French rap when it's a keep on racing leg. And they're like, there's no way she'll be able to even say those words. Can we just get them to pass? It's a keep on racing leg anyway. So yeah, the judges on this task were really, really lenient. Because there was the cousins, the Karishna, they fell. And they're in the middle of it, and they passed.
Well, do you think they're actually showing that performance of the task, or are they showing the most interesting thing and then showing them passing?
I mean, why would you show someone mess up and then pass? That would lose your credibility as a judging.
Well, and these things, like sometimes they judge it like you have to have your foot on the exact spot at the exact beat. And other times it's like, did you do A, B, and C? And you
right. We saw that with the river dance last season, right? It was the sliding scale of like, oh my God, you did it perfectly versus like, all right, Joel, you didn't have a heart attack by the end of this. So here's your clue.
Yeah, you didn't sweat all the way through your shirt.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you notice? Oh, sorry.
No, I love dance tasks though, and this was our first one, and it's also this is probably like besides the roadblock one of the biggest equalizers we got. That yes, there were still teams that excels at it, but like it was a great, break point for Rod and Letitia, who are
Oh
like,
yeah,
oh
I
yeah,
was a breakdancer back in the day, and you look at him and he doesn't even know how to do a shuffle. I'm like, dude, I was doing that dance in the 80s on cardboard when I was 6. Like, what is wrong with you, bro? This is just a simple shuffle. Like, they didn't do one real breakdancing move. All they did was setups to get into a real breakdancing move. I thought at minimum they would make him do a backspin, which is like the easiest thing in the world. You just get down there and you spin like a little kid. Like,
Well, I wonder if people maybe didn't want to do that because they thought they were going to have to do a backspin.
I mean, if your task is do a puzzle or dance task, I don't care how bad you are at puzzles, you start with the puzzles, because a puzzle is literally I could go and look at this puzzle and be done in 10 seconds, literally, like walk down the line, okay, done. Just like, Team Walla Walla did. Like, he got one word wrong, but he knew it was either this or that. He just walked down, got it, okay, and then got it, and then moved right along past 6 teams, even though they were lost for like 10 20 minutes in the beginning of the leg. They just got up there and passed the team. So yeah, this was one of the most uneven detours in the history of the Amazing Race.
Well, what's wild to me is that on paper, it does look that uneven, and yet you still had teams that immediately chose the dancing, and a team that switched to the dancing and did better at the dancing, which I think some of it, like, yeah, on paper that is pretty unbalanced. It's not the most unbalanced task this season.
No.
No.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think so.
What do you think was worse than this?
I think
A task that could take seconds versus a task that has to take a minimum half hour.
I think we've had entire tasks that people barely even tried. What about the flags versus
the flags versus the balloons? It's not a seconds long thing, but I do think that, like, take the balloon on a stratified path versus hey match it and then just go with that was a very tough one. So, like, I think in comparison to that, this was okay, though. To Jess's point, it's a bit of hindsight in the fact that I think that the Rebus puzzle, especially with all the billboards being in a row, it's not like you even have to scour through town, though. It sounds like,
and you can stand in front of the judge and guess 10 things.
Yeah,
instead of going all the way back to the beginning, where you should have to go to the beginning and make your way all the way back to start and make another guess.
This is one of those, like, season 13 task, which is one of my favorite things, just because it's so mean, was when they just had that. They were in Brazil and they had that field full of billboards, and they said, "Find your next clue," and all you had to do was just, like, read every single thing to the judge until you got the right one.
Yeah,
it's almost at that level.
And I was very interested in seeing that the teams had the boards like how Survivor has when they do those things where you can hide the puzzle and then you can run off. And didn't really see many people hiding. And if they did, they only hit half the board. Very curious to see why Michelle didn't go and just look at somebody else's.
That's a good question. I wish I'd asked her that. Mike, did you ask her that?
Well, I think they do clear the boards after the teams are done. So she could have, I guess, gone over to like Karishma's and be like, okay, I think this might be right. But then at the same time, if you're competing 1v1, you're kind of taking a calculated risk of like, okay, I could go out on my own and get ahead of you, or we could finish at the exact same time.
Oh yeah, I would never copy from someone else because I trust myself. I believe in myself. I'll never let somebody else lose my race. But when you're not good, like Michelle was struggling, literally got everyone wrong multiple times, like switch tasks or go ahead and look at somebody else's if they're not going to drop the board. Because if it was you can't look at somebody else's, then they wouldn't need those things.
Right. Yeah. Ricky even made that comment, right? Where he's like, oh, Amber got there first. And he said, oh, I could get a bit of a lead. And he did say, to your point, Justin, him being like, no, that's not the right thing to do. I would also imagine part of him's like, well, I don't know how much of that is right. And I don't want to be led in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
There's no incentive. Like, you have no way of knowing if somebody is good at a task before you copy off of them. Yeah.
Ricky and Caesar are 100% running their race. They don't care about any of the other teams. They're running their race. Whereas you could see with like Amber and Vinny, I don't know what. Well, I think I know the strategy behind why they stopped and didn't run to go for first place. One, I don't think they could beat them in a foot race, which to me is surprising. But because they look like they're in much better shape than Ricky and Caesar. If you just generally, do that blanket, I'm looking at you to see what kind of shape you're in, right? Like it looks like they were much, much better physical shape, but obviously that's not the case. But still, that you see them leave, and you're waiting, if you don't trust that person, then just follow them until you can kind of ask while you're running people, blah, blah, blah. And then you ask, where is whatever? You can just scream it as you're running, and hopefully somebody's like, this way, but stay close to them and hopefully they make a mistake. Do you think that it was worth it to stop and help one of the weaker teams? And I could tell you what my strategy, why, but I want to hear what you guys think first.
Well, my thought is, I think they knew they weren't going to beat them. Like, even if it was a neck and neck foot race, I don't think there was a foot race thing so much as a knowing where they're going thing, because Cesar is fluent in Spanish and he can have a long conversation. Like, watching him ask for directions in Spanish speaking countries is really interesting, because you have other teams that can get by. Like, they can go up and they can say, donde está
La biblioteca.
Yeah. But there actually was a biblioteca.
There was a biblioteca in this one.
But he can say, okay, is it 3 blocks? How much further? Where do I turn?
Yeah.
How long should I be walking? And he can have that back and forth with them and get very detailed directions and be reasonably certain that he knows where he's going, and also that the people he's asked know what they're doing.
Right.
And that's something you can only get when you are fluent in the language. Like, if you're conversational, like, I don't know if I could go on the streets of Berlin and ask somebody for directions and get good directions, even though I speak like mediocre passable German. But these two, Amber and Vinny, don't really speak any Spanish. They have to rely on like broken back and forth to get directions. And they could fall over Ken and Cesar, but I don't get the sense that they were that close to them at that point. And I think at that point, if you're thinking about what's going to benefit me the most, they already know they're not out of the race. They're done.
Mhm.
They're ready to go to the pit stop. What could they do that helps them the next time around? And the thing that helps them the next time around is kind of engendering some goodwill. And I know, Justin, you have very specific feelings on like how much alliances help you and how much helping other teams helps you. But I think I especially want to hear more about your take on this, because we are going to be getting into this with like maybe the only person I've ever seen on the show that likes and knows The Amazing Race better than you do.
Well, watching him race this leg, I don't think so. But
Whoa.
but I will give him that he is a bigger super fan than I am, because it got to him like when he was in his teens, like he was young. Like, when I got into it, I was already in my 20s. So I had a life already. When you're a teen, like you get obsessed with things. It's like, just you see what all the Big Brother fans are just like.
I mean, thank God I was out of college before reality TV started. I don't think I would have finished college.
Gosh, yeah, I would have definitely been on something in the 90s. It would have been bad. But so here's what I think happens. I think Amber and Vinny know they can beat Angie and Danny, and they're like, hey, if we can keep Angie and Danny up at the top, that means stronger teams at the bottom. So I want to stay with them. So I think they were like, all right, screw it. Let's make sure that one of these weaker teams is up at the top. So at least we know in that first group, when we go out there, we can beat one of these teams. And we only have to worry about beating one team.
I don't have to outrun the bear. I just have to outrun you.
That's right.
And there's also, I think, the additional benefit of like Angie and Danny, they made one of the biggest jumps of the season so far. And so you also have to assume like, okay, they have a definitive strength. If that's something that's not my strength, much like I think Angie and Danny are kind of pursuing the strategy of like trying to make as many connections as possible, because inevitably when they face like an ultra physical task that's going to disadvantage them, then they can look to people as like, hey, do you mind helping us out? Younger, more athletic team. And so I can imagine Amber and Vinny also kind of benefit symbiotically of like, all right, maybe if we're struggling on like a brain teaser task, if we're doing the Franz Kafka roadblock all over again, like here's another team that also can help us because we just helped them.
Okay, Franz Kafka roadblock is easier than Reba's puzzle. That's my hot take.
How?
How do you think the Globetrotters would have done on the Rebus puzzle? Would they Sunny and Busy it?
They'd still be there.
They'd probably get help though, because they'd probably get noticed. They get recognized.
Yeah,
somebody help them. Yeah, just like they get that Rob and Amber effect, where they have somebody just follow them the whole leg and take them everywhere they need to go, introduce them to their parents, show up at the mat with them. Like
they'd run into Juan's aunt, and she'd help them.
Yeah,
exactly.
Cooking
well,
some
it's
tamales.
interesting because now we've seen this 2 episodes in a row, right? That Danny and Angie first they decide to work together with Kishori and Karishma. My headcanon is as much as I love the two of them, they're like, all right, can we like yoke ourselves to like maybe a team that's more likely to finish in the top group here. And so I think Amber and Vinny is like, it's odd to say investment because again, I think this is a obviously less strategic show than the other two of the big three on CBS, but like they're a good team. Besides Ricky and Cesar, they're probably the other team that I would potentially want to try to build a working relationship with because they are strong and good at what they do, but there's also holes that you could fill in to make it seem like a worthwhile relationship.
I get it, but alliances on the Amazing Race suck. It's dumb, and you shouldn't do it.
Yep.
And
You heard it here, folks.
You heard it here, and you'll hear it constantly. And this is not real, like an alliance, because I could guarantee I could guarantee you that Amber and Vinny, if they're next to him, okay, they'll help Danny and Angie, but they're not going to go out of their way to help Danny and Angie the way like the Mind 5 did. Like we're going to all sit here and wait, and then until everybody finishes, and we'll all leave at the same time, and we'll all make sure that everybody gets to the top. Like no. Like there's no U-turns this season. So there's no reason to be nice to somebody because there's nothing that another team can do that can stop you from winning the race. If you run your best race, then nothing can stop you because there's no U-turns on this. And like that was the only thing that Diana was worried about. And I'm like, Diana, they have to beat us to the board to U-turn us. Who's beating us to the board? Nobody. And she was like, how do you know that? I said, I know that. And we went to 3 boards and we were there first 3 times. And the only reason I used the third one is so I could be in the record books for the first person to ever use the third roadblock on the Amazing Race. I didn't really, that, and I wanted to help Denise and James Earl get a little further. But here, would the Danny and Angie, if you could have designed their best leg, this is it. So if you get your best leg and you only finish third, it doesn't say much for you. This is like 100% up his alley.
I mean, it's tough because with the departure groups, like they were starting half an hour before Angie and Danny. So honestly, like I don't want to do what you just mentioned of like, well, actually we lost, but we actually won. But like they basically finished first among the fact that the other 2 teams had basically no issues this entire leg.
They finished, yes, they did well. They made up time, but how often are they going to be up in the front of the pack to get a lead? So like if the few times we fell behind in a leg, we made up that time in that same leg. It's not like we made it up in the next leg. Like we fell behind into like 7th place and we still won that leg because we hustled and we made it to the next challenge and we did it. And that's what like I don't see with them because he's so supportive of his mom that I don't see him giving her any motivation to go on. Like he's like, it's okay, mother. Like, come on, now it's no problem. Skip along, we'll make it there. Like it's a great attitude.
He did try last week so subtly by being like, well, now we're in 7th place. And she pushed back very much so.
Yeah, I don't think I want to mess with Angie.
No, I don't. Listen, I love Danny and I love his passion for the race. And I hope he makes it to the end. Like, yeah, I mean, to be fair, the top 3 teams that finished this week are teams that I know watch the races recap to prepare because 2 of them contacted me like a year and a half, 2 years ago, 3 years ago when they, I guess, when they were like, hey, so if you were going through the casting process, like, they all ask the same thing. Like they try to hide that they're being cast. And I'm like, okay, well, if I was wink, wink, it's like, it's funny, but I love his passion for the race. I just wish that he wouldn't have taken his mom as much as he's a mama's boy and as much as he loves his mom. Like, okay, your dream is to run the race. You have 0 chance of winning the race with your mom. But if you partner with somebody else, your dream is to not only run the race, you have some of the best skills to win this race if you partner with the right person.
Well, this is why you chose Diana.
Well, I chose Diana in life because she is everything I'm not. Diana she saved my life. And the reason that I fell so far in love with her is because she is the type of mother that I wanted when I grown up. Like, so I wanted my kids to have a mother like her. And that from day one has always been something that has humbled me because she's even better than I expected her. Like, she's incredible with these kids. Like, both of my kids are 3 and 5. They can read, do math. It's like, they don't go to school. She's homeschooling and they're well-mannered. I mean, I couldn't have done that. I mean, she's absolutely incredible. And the only way to win the race is to have a balance. And Diana is my perfect balance, which is why I would
Mhm.
never race with anybody else. Like if unless obviously they like forced you to pick somebody else, sure, I'd probably pick Jen Hudak or somebody like that and just go. But to have a balance, which is why I didn't know Ricky and Caesar, because to me, Ricky and Caesar seem very similar. Maybe have similar experiences growing up, probably got into similar things. And that's just like me assuming because we didn't get a lot of information. So
Right.
when people have similar backgrounds like twins will never win the race. There will never be a set of twins to ever win the race. You're literally the same person. I mean, your DNA is the same as that person. You grew up the same as that person. You think the same as that. Like, everything is the same. So it's just like one person running the race. There's no balance.
Well,
We
that's
came
why
close
the
with
only
with Emily, yeah, with
I was about
Emily
to
and
say,
Molly.
yeah.
Yeah, like the only twins to do the best were the ones that led completely separate
Yeah.
lives. They have separate personalities.
Yep.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think it's really interesting that Danny was so adamant about bringing his mom. And I
Yeah.
think that says something about like who he is as a person, which I really respect. But at the same time, I feel like if you're that into the Amazing Race, you should be out there like scouting the best person.
Because like Chris and Mary, all right. So
Mhm.
people were like, "Oh, this is what Annalise should have been like with her dad."
Yeah, one team went out second and one team went to the
Yeah,
final.
one team
fourth
went to
place. Yeah.
Final four. Yeah.
right. So if do you want 12 teams like Steve and Annalie, or would you rather have 12 teams of I'm just happy to be here with my daddy and Chris and Mary? Great story, but they have zero chance to win.
Well, here's the thing, Justin. I don't mind if we have 12 teams all on the same skill level, regardless of whether that skill level is Amazing Race gods or total hot messes. Like, I just want the playing field to be even. Like,
Yeah,
I want
that's never
everybody
gonna
to have
happen.
the same chance of winning.
Yeah,
And
that's never
I
gonna
don't
happen.
mind it. Yeah, I don't mind if we've got like 12 teams of scrubs because they're all scrubs.
All right. Well, what the hell's going on with Yvonne and Melissa?
Yeah,
Let's hold it. Let's get into some of our teams so we can more organize our thoughts.
yeah.
yeah,
We'll
go
do
for it.
them. We'll do
Yeah, you
them
guys
team
lead
by
it. I'm
team,
sorry.
but-
Go for it.
No, please. This is
please, but
amazing. Well, let's start with our top team
Yep.
here because go ahead, Jess.
I want to say like casting may be trying to cast for character more than competitive racing these days. And I hear your point, Justin, but there are teams that come in here that are such huge surprises as racers, because I think nobody, apart from my own son, apparently, would look at a photo of the entire cast, point to these guys and say, this team's going to win. And they are great guys. They have a good story. They have huge personalities.
Yeah.
But I don't look to this team archetype as a team like they're foodies. They're New Yorkers. And yet they're some of the best racers we've ever seen. Like 4 legs in, they have not made a single mistake. They know the show front and back, and they have a great bond. And it's like, who would have known that this team was going to be this good? Nobody. And that's somebody in casting knew that.
Yeah, and they could potentially be the best team to ever run the race right now with the statistics that they have. They have a 1.5 average finish. They never finished out of the top 2. I mean, it's 4 legs in, but it's just like they're on like Eric and Jeremy level where they're just never finishing out of the top 3, which is awesome.
I mean, yeah, from your own personal history. I mean, again, outside of like that leg 1 finish, I mean, to me, it's a very similar trajectory to what you and Diana were doing. Do you think, much like what you guys did, this is a momentum that they can keep up, or do you think eventually something's going to cause them to crumble?
Looking at the other teams, I think that the only thing that can stop them is them. Like if they run their best race, I don't think anybody can beat them.
I mean, even something as small as them in the cab and being like, well, we're stuck in traffic, rather than just like making small talk with our cabbie. We know where we're going. It's a plaza full of statues. A task will probably have something to do with statues. Let's look up the major ones. Like,
super smart.
I mean,
next level
honestly,
thinking.
knowing who Botero is already a leg up there.
Right.
Yeah.
But to have the statues, like that's the stuff that me and Diana did. That's the reason why we picked up 5 minutes here, 4 minutes there, 3 minutes here, 20 minutes there. Like these little things that happen along the race, they add up, especially when a leg is only going to be like 2-3 hours long. like the last leg was. Like if you can if you can get a lead by 20 minutes in that leg, that's huge. So picking up these little things, and I think being New Yorkers is gives them a little edge as well when it comes to travel, because New Yorkers are just used to being in a hustle and bustle and just like doing things, making quick decisions and being aware of their surroundings and going on trains. And navigating through trains can be a lot harder than navigating through an airport, which they don't have to do this season. But I think that just gives them a little bit of an edge because you're from New York. You have an edge. You feel like, we're in the biggest city in the world, or one of the biggest cities in the world. And we're able to not only survive here, we're thriving. They're thriving in New York. So if you could do that in a city that is full of nothing but competition, it gives you a different edge than somebody who's from Walla Walla, Washington, where you probably know everybody in your hometown.
Yeah. Oh, New York City trivia for the two of yous, because you have both been New Yorkers at various points.
And you did say yous, so we know the city that we're talking about.
The two Utes.
I'm like the least New Yorker of the three of you, and I'm the only one that still lives here. So the sculptor Botero, do you know where there are statues by him in New York?
No.
I mean, did he do the Wall Street Bull?
No, he makes like rounder, chunkier. I mean, the only places that I could think of that would like Chinatown has it, but I don't know if he does that type of art.
Time Warner Center.
Oh, really?
Yep. Lobby of the Time Warner Center. There are two giant Botero statues of a naked man and a naked woman. And my son, when he was about 4 years old, he runs into the Time Warner Center. He's like, "Can I go touch the naked people?"
Oh my God.
Are you sure he wasn't in Times Square when he said that?
Oh, Columbus Circle. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm like, where is this Times Warner?
Right near the giant globe, fittingly enough.
That makes sense.
Yeah, right near the giant globe. But yes, so I say Botero, and all I think of is my son screaming about naked people.
I also love their first guess, which was "the world is bigger than your evil thoughts," which is like very therapeutic to me.
I like that.
Like if I'm in a depressive state, I just have to think, well, the world is bigger than my evil thoughts, so I can move on. So thank you, Ricky and Cesar, for that reward.
Yeah, Rebus question. When they showed the pictures of the Rebus, I did not get that one square was a mirror. And that threw me off a little bit.
I thought it was just the race flag because it was the red and yellow stripe. So I just thought, oh, flag. I don't know. I don't get it. I mean, it wouldn't lead me down the path of the ski trip that the two generations of rats took. But that one did stump me a little bit.
The world is bigger than the Amazing Race thinks. Is that what it was?
Exactly. And the people are more beautiful.
It just seems like such a simple saying. And you got to know, like, on the Amazing Race, it's always going to have these simple sayings that kind of relate to the race. And I don't know. It just seems like when they put it up on there, it's like, okay, as soon as you understand that that's a mirror, it's pretty simple. Because it's you know if that's you or I, because that's the only thing, or we, you, I, or we.
I don't know
smaller or bigger.
How many people checked out that one Time magazine issue where the person of the year was you? That would have been the dead giveaway, right? When it was just the mirror on the magazine.
Look at you pulling out, assuming people actually read magazines still.
What's a magazine?
Magazine? I hope so. Well, let's move on here to Amber and Vinny. We spoke about them a little bit, but I'm keen, Jess. Let's talk about, from an edit perspective, this plot point of Amber self-sabotaging, of her not really believing she can do it. We get a teaser next week that she's going to struggle a bit. Now, we just talked last week about how that really wasn't a thing this week. Do we feel like this is like a blip of her eventually overcoming it, a la, Kim Holderness, or is this going to be a long-term concern?
Well, I think what's fascinating to me about these two, there's two things that fascinate me. And Vinny actually fascinates me far more than Amber does. But I will get to that. One thing that I think is interesting is that they didn't start to freak out about any of this until they got up in front. Like when they were in 9th place, they really did not seem to be at all troubled by what they were doing. And it was only when they started, when they finished second and they end up in the front of the pack, that the pressure comes down and she really starts to get in her head about it, which I think is a really, really interesting thing. And I don't think I've ever seen an Amazing Race team that gets stressed out by success. I've seen teams that are very, very good, and the second that something bad happens, they crumble. But she crumbles as soon as something good happens. I think that's interesting. And then Vinny is interesting because he's a type A person who thinks he's type B. And I think Amber's kind of type B who thinks she's type A, and I think it's a fascinating dynamic. Like, Vinny thinks he is season 31 Colin, and he is really season 5 Colin.
Oh my gosh, that's a
That's
big difference.
Well, yeah, because they initially described themselves right in the beginning of the episode. It's like, well, we're both type A, we're both OCD, but I think we sort of see it manifest into your point, just two very different ways in reactions to the
Yeah.
race.
You see Vinny like being like what he's saying is different from how he's saying it. Like he's trying to be very zen and like very
Yeah.
very relaxed and laid back about it, but everything he's saying is very type A.
Well, they both have one of the most dangerous jobs in the world as far as it goes
Mhm.
about like they're taking someone's life. Like
Yeah.
that's the most dangerous part of any surgery is
Yep.
going under.
Mhm.
So they have one of the most stressful jobs in the world because every time they do their job, they can potentially, if they mess up, there is there's there's no margin right there. So I can understand like when they're doing things that they're comfortable with, that they could both be type A and extremely confident. But it's what happens when you get out of your comfort zone. Are you really a type A, or
Mhm.
are you just type A when you're confident? A type A
That's the
person
thing,
is like
Yeah.
Rod and Leticia. Like Rod seems to be like, oh, I'm confident in everything, no matter what. Even when I'm sucking, I'm still going to be confident about it, and you can't tell him nothing. But he got humbled quickly when he couldn't do a simple shuffle,
Yeah.
and then so I don't
And
know.
you have Leticia who's like, no, I know what I am not good at, which is like confidence in and of itself, which is a different from like Amber, who's like, I know I'm not good at this, and also I'm scared to do it. And it's tough because like I absolutely see, as someone who suffers from anxiety, like the perspective that she brings in, along with the compounding pressure of you're in a race for $1 million and also you're on national television. Like you don't want to be the partner to screw everything up.
Yeah,
But I'm hoping this is both for her own sanity as well as like their own dynamic, the low point for the two of them from a mentality perspective, so that now they can sort of work on the idea of, okay, let's build up Amber's confidence a bit and be able to make her feel like she's a worthy team member to Vinny.
I almost see like Scott and Brookish
Mm.
vibes from them,
Mm.
Yeah.
where she doesn't believe in herself, but she still does everything. Like, and then
Mhm.
eventually maybe she'll start to believe in herself, and that's when the right time is, and it's like 9, 10, 11. That's when she's really starting to believe in herself, and then that's when other teams are like, oh my god, they're starting to get even better. So they could potentially step on the gas and be the team that everybody's afraid of. But as of right now, I mean, Rod and Leticia, you saw when they don't get a task that's on their line, they have problems. Like
Mhm.
they're not they don't use their thought process to fix the issues. They're just like, let's just do it. Let's just keep doing it. Let's just keep trying. Whereas let's think. And the biggest thing about this dance challenge, which nobody pointed out, is that this is the first time that all the Amazing Race dancers were in the front and they couldn't watch the other people.
Mm.
Yeah.
So you couldn't kind of hide in any kind of moves. You would right up front, and you don't even know if the people behind you are dancers. So I love that about this. It was something a little simple thing that makes this a little bit harder, but the judge was a little too
Yeah.
lenient.
And also, we'll get to it with maybe Juan and Shane as well. I also thought it was interesting how maybe just due to like the place they booked out, they couldn't go into the separate rooms to practice with instructors. And so it was interesting to have, much like Ricky and Cesar are able to do, well, nobody's here, so we can just say multiple answers to the judge. You get Juan and Shane who are like, well, we're the first here, so let's just take our time and practice as much as possible because there's not going to be any more one-on-one time once everyone starts showing up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was super smart.
Yep.
All right, well, let's move on. We mentioned them before, but Angie and Danny, far and away their best leg yet. I mean, I know that Rick and Cesar, they said last time it was their perfect day. It was Angie and Danny's perfect day. It was the buffet of puzzles. The question is, Jess, as Justin has kind of alluded to, how much will this last? They'll still be leaving, I would imagine, in the second departure group, unless they make this the first departure group again, which would give them a little bit of buffer time. But do you expect this run to last for them?
I wish that I could say yes, because I love seeing how much he loves this show and how much it is his dream, and I want them to be in it as long as possible so he can have that. Because I mean, if it was a contest, if we were competing for who loves the Amazing Race the most, I think, I don't know if anybody has ever loved it as much as he does. I don't even think I'm not even sure Bertram and Elise love it as much as he does. So I from that angle, I want them to stick around, but I also know that there's a lot about The Amazing Race that even if you have the encyclopedic knowledge that comes from having seen every season 3 times, there's a lot about it that from a physical standpoint you need to be prepared for that I don't know that this team is necessarily as prepared for as they had hoped.
Yeah. As much as he likes to do puzzles and stuff, like the problem is on the Amazing Race, the thing that people don't prepare for is adrenaline and how it affects you.
Yep.
It affects the way you think. It affects the way you breathe. It affects the way your hands move and like you're trying to do things. It affects everything. And you can't fake that. It's hard to prepare for that before the Amazing Race. You have to put yourself in scenarios where you're going to get spikes of adrenaline multiple times. But not only the spikes of adrenaline, but the down after that spike leaves, you're like, oh, it just pulls everything out of you and you're almost exhausted and you feel like giving up until you get something that gives you another spike. And then it's like, go. And so that's what having a good teammate does. That good teammate is the one that could slow down that downfall and raise up that peak of that adrenaline rush.
No.
And that's when you look at teams and you can kind of see who are the teams that work really well together.
Well, they should have just brought one of the paragliding instructors with them. Anytime they need that spike of adrenaline, it's like, all right, just take me around the Andes one more time. It'll cost us like 20 minutes, but I'll be feeling right as rain after that. I will also say randomly, just because I was thinking about the architecture of the town that they were in, like, love the random escalators, love even more the random dog on the escalator.
Yep, dog on the escalator was great.
Dog on the escalator, incredible B-roll. Kudos
Best shot,
to anyone who shot that.
Best shot of the episode, hands down. Was the dog. I was like,
following the rules of the escalator too. Like you notice they weren't allowed to walk on the escalator.
Didn't notice that.
They had to ride, and so did the dog.
All right, well, let's move out of our top three teams here to Rod and Leticia, who, definitely they bounce a place up from 5th to 4th, but I would say probably have their weakest leg yet. I definitely felt like they were obviously doing incredibly well in the first couple legs, but I know I definitely thought, okay, I feel like they're not as complete of a team in terms of a skill set as Ricky and Cesar. We saw this happen here where, I think it boiled down to, as Leticia will put at the pit stop, that like, Rod was a bit bullheaded and thought, okay, much like we'll talk about with another team, like, I know this well enough that I can teach you it, so we'll be fine with it. And it's interesting that, I think they usually were ones to take the mental tasks, surprisingly, despite looking a bit more of a physical team the past few legs. But here's where they made the exception, because Rod thought this was going to be, something experiential for him. I think to him it was a 5-hole, though, again, based on what seemed to be his limited experience with breakdancing, it wasn't even a 5-hole.
No, I was like, if they have a football challenge or anything like that, that's his 5-hole. But there is never been anybody on the race who is more fit than him. There's been people who are stronger, like Michael Norwood, who's, he competes in strongman competitions and stuff, but if you've ever seen him with his shirt off, he has zero body fat. He's shredded. He looks like he's 20. The dude is. I want to see him represent the Amazing Race on the challenge. Like that's the type of people I want to see on the challenge representing for us. Like the person that can go up and knock Fessy on his ass. Like, that's what I want to see.
The Danny McRae to represent the Amazing Race, right? The NFL vet.
There we go. Let's go. Put him up there. But they don't want Amazing Races to win that.
This is like this is the first time in 3 weeks we haven't had challenge representation on our podcast. So interesting.
That's true.
And this is the most we've discussed it.
Not yet, at least.
They'll never have me on. No, they'll never have me on.
You'd be amazing on the challenge, Justin. I would watch the hell out of that.
I don't know if I could win, but I guarantee you nobody will forget me. Because
I want to see you get in an argument with Johnny Bananas.
Oh, me too. Oh, me too. Me too. Oh, I love
season
Bananas.
3. Don't worry.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Also, I would watch Justin on the Traders.
I think that'd be really fun.
That would.
But what do you think, Jess? Is this going to be like their nadir? Or do you think now they're moving on from this? Rod's going to open up more to his partner's opinions?
I doubt it, but I love that the two of them are so different. And we've talked a lot about how your partner needs to have differences to complement you. But I think a key component that's missing from these two is that you have to know what those differences are and that your partner is different in the right ways. And I think the two of them, I think Rod is going in there with to your point, so much confidence and so much self-assuredness. And Leticia doesn't have that. She's much more realistic about what's going on and what she needs from him. And I don't think he knows he needs things from her. And this is a really interesting dynamic to see out of the two of them. And you can tell like they're great together. Like as a couple, they're wonderful, but as racers, I think it's not quite the yin and yang that you want out of a couple team.
Mm. What do we make of? I don't think we're going to get anything. There's to Justin's point, I don't think there really is going to be ever like concrete alliances anymore on The Amazing Race after the reception to season 32. And I would say what Angie and Danny are trying to do is maybe like the closest to it. We got Rod and Leticia working alongside Juan and Shane, who like they did that big foot race with last week. This week they were still in it together. And it was honestly the thing that really helped them pick up because they finished quite behind in the dancing task compared to everything else. Do you think these teams will possibly vibe more together the more that they end up racing alongside each other? Or is this sort of like too many alphas in the kitchen?
I think it's because of where they were. Like when you're middle of the pack team, you're not going to win and you're not going to go home. So it's like, why not just help each other and just finish? It's like that's the middle of the pack mentality, which a lot of teams have. It's like, okay, we know not going to win this leg, but let's make sure the both of us don't go home. So they'll have this temporary thing, but if they're racing for 1 and 2, there's a 0% chance they're helping each other. They're going for it because they're both.
So we saw that last week. They didn't know they were going
alpha.
for 1 and 2, and they were still sprinting like it was the 40-meter dash.
Yeah, and I think that the conversation in the hotel room after this leg will determine whether they'll go to the finals or not. Whether he understands that he needs to back off sometimes, like I did on leg 1, when I was like, we're going for the fast forward. Like one time in the history of the race has weather ever affected it. Let's go. Like, you know what I mean? I'll take stats all day. It's like less than 5% chance. Let's go. And Diana didn't, she just, okay, and just went. We had a conversation afterwards. And then it was like, okay, I'll let you pick the stuff from now on. And if you can't decide, I'll pick. Except in the French challenge, which she hated before because it was a RHAP challenge. But I was like, she thinks shucking oysters is easy. Shucking oysters is hard, especially if you've never done it.
Yeah.
But
rather not run the race in a cut hand for the rest of your time.
You're all stinking like fish. Just get up there and rap. But I think this next leg, you'll see if there's not a change in attitude between this team. If they learn something from this leg and he is able to humble himself a little bit. To like, the break dancer, but you sucked. Okay. Like you were just as good as the cousins. So stop it.
And it didn't help that like Rod could have been able to say, oh yeah, but we made that mistake, or I made the mistake, but then we bounced back. But then there was a little bit of a tiff on their way to the pit stop, right? Because they were all wandering around like chickens with their heads cut off, trying to find Phil. And then as they're walking up, Leticia is like, I told you to keep going. You didn't listen to me. So it was like that recent reminder again about how he wasn't necessarily acknowledging her opinions.
Yeah, and I think she's a strong enough personality that she'll be able to express that to him in the hotel room that night. Especially because you could see how like she's a little cheeky. Like, I'm too tired. You ain't getting any after this leg. Well, she's gonna be like, well, I know you're on that testosterone replacement stuff, so you are in peak. Like, go there. Well, he does. He puts it on his he has testosterone replacement therapy, and that gives you that young, like, I gotta do it feeling. So she's gonna be like, you ain't getting enough of the whole race unless you start listening, and he'll be like, okay, I'm there. Like, I think that I think she'll be able to use that power of the woman to be like, you better listen.
I'll be completely honest. I did not expect someone besides myself to take the conversation in that direction.
Sorry.
Dear Lord.
They started it. All right. She made the comment about it. Yeah.
Do you think, do you think Rod's going to sponsor a future leg of The Amazing Race after this for season 37? Like, all right, this leg, you've won a lifetime supply of testosterone replacement.
Oh, dear.
Well, listen, if you look at him and then you're like, damn, dude still looks like he's 20. I might want to start popping some testosterone.
Yeah, he's a good advertisement for it, for sure.
Exactly.
I mean,
all right, well, let's move on. Speaking of testosterone, Juan and Shane here. So I'm a little confused. So they had a little bit of a gambit in the cab where they took an alternate route that said on the GPS it was going to take them like a few minutes longer, but it would actually get them ahead of the traffic. And then that kind of like actually slowed them down, it seems like, because they actually fell back to catch up to Rod and Leticia, it seemed.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what the edit made it look like. But I would totally agree with them. If I understand GPS is like, okay, it's a 4-minute difference, but this way is no traffic and this way is traffic. you don't know if traffic's going to get worse or if traffic's going to get better. And 9 times out of 10, traffic gets worse before it gets better. So I'm going to trust the local guy and be like, okay, avoid this and go for it. Like, but I'm going to be looking at that Google map the whole time and making sure like things are on point.
It's also psychologically the feeling that you are moving is better than the feeling that you are not moving.
I can't tell you the stress of being in a cab in traffic and there's nothing you could do. You just want to get out and you just don't know how far. You feel helpless. And feeling helpless on the race is the worst feeling.
I'd imagine especially a sustained feeling of helplessness, right? Because the only thing that's going to relieve it is either seeing another team next to you or actually moving. And like you said, it is the most you are out of control of your own fate.
I mean, you saw my first episode. It was 40 minutes, 30 minutes in a cab ride of me just straight crying because I was going on. My dream. I can't believe it. The first one. Could you imagine that season without the green team? We got eliminated first.
Dear Lord.
Jeez,
that's the darkest timeline. I will say, I think the only thing I could think of that's more stressful than being on The Amazing Race and being stuck in traffic with no control over it is being on The Amazing Race and being at the roadblock and having my partner do the roadblock and not be good at the roadblock.
Yeah, that is tough.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah.
To watch your teammates struggle.
I could see benefits and drawbacks. For me, I think if for Justin's point, if you're like a like breeds like team, you could just feed into each other's worst habits if you're together in the cab. Whereas if I'm by myself, I'm my own worst enemy, but the world is, bigger than my own evil thoughts. And I would just allow myself to eat my own head as opposed to like, having two dumb bitches say exactly to each other in the cab as you're like, this is it. We're done. It's all over. Game over, man.
Yeah. It's an interesting dynamic to watch the stress levels of teams go up and down and the joy and the stress. And I think that's one of the things that makes this race incredible because it's such a wave of emotions in one episode, which, takes place for them in a couple hours and it just ups and downs. There's so much spikes and all these chemicals rushing through your body. You just got to deal with it, dopamine. And it's like, your body's just crazy. And if you can't get your mind right and then your body starts like, I was shaking most of the race because of the adrenaline rush. I don't know. Juan and Shane though, they're strong, but again, I think they're too similar. They don't make the best choices as far as detours. They don't play to their strengths, which is kind of weird. So I don't see them doing much.
Yeah, it's something I would also say for like one of our front running teams, or at least ones that have done consistently well so far. We haven't seen too much of them. I think the most we've gotten is like Juan getting quote unquote the home field advantage with these 2 legs of Colombia. And that is now done with, right? Because we're moving on to Chile next week.
Yeah. There's 2. Yeah, with this, they do two episodes per country, which is cool. I don't mind that as long as they show different parts of the country and do different things. I didn't like that they rushed the second leg and made like the second leg was like 2 hours long. It's like you're gonna do a double leg, a back to back, but the second part is like 2 hours long. So it's, I don't know.
Well, let's move into the back half of teams here. And yeah, so team third place here, the bronze medalist ended up losing their shine a bit here, and Derek and Shalisa, having some interesting decisions to be made, Jess, considering that like I think maybe Shalisa had the hardest detour to accomplish because it wasn't just learn the dance, it was learn the dance and also teach it to your partner at the same time.
Yeah, well, Rod thought he was doing the same thing, but this is actually what Shalisa was doing. And by the way, I texted Mike while I was watching the episode yesterday, and it said, my notes are just me writing down everything Shalisa says, because she is bar none the funniest person we've had on The Amazing Race in a really, really long time.
I love her when Derek's in the cab saying like we're not the fastest or the strongest or the cutest, and she's like, well, speak for yourself.
Yeah, I just thought that they came from these jobs that are very much authoritative and that might get to them, like him used to being in control, being in charge, people listening to him, like. And now you're on a race where it's the opposite. Nobody's listening to you. Half the people don't understand you, and how his dynamic with his wife. But he's impressed me. But the way he deals with the stresses with his wife, because that was what I wasn't too sure of. He was going to be too overbearing. But she holds her own, and she's able to put him in a little bit of his place. So they'll be around for a while. I can't see them winning though.
Yeah, I mean, this was definitely their most error-prone leg. Even last time they were bickering the most on the cooking, but they were still able to get it done with like
Mhm.
enough speed to finish in third place. Here, they finish okay in the dancing, despite the fact that again, Shalisa had to overcome her own roadblock basically on top of a detour of teach the dance to your partner. But then she does her actual roadblock and takes her like 8 attempts, I think, to finally figure it out. Certainly not the person that will struggle the most on it, but I would say probably like in the top 3 of teams to struggle with this roadblock.
Yeah, I think my favorite part was when she looks at the camera, she says, "Here's the part where they're gonna show how many I got wrong."
Yeah.
Yeah. Ding, 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 ding. All of them. Good job. Yeah. This one was definitely a lot deceptively tough, I guess, because I look at this challenge and like, it doesn't really seem that difficult. I like that they made them do 12 of the
Yeah.
20 rather than all of them. And because all of them would have been a little easier, I think, because you just do them all in order and you just go around. If you get one right, then you get them all right. So did you notice Rod picked up the tiles and brought it with him?
Oh, I didn't notice that. Yeah,
No, that's
because
weird.
I saw that, like, for example, I think it was Ricky laid out the tiles ahead of time to look at what possible names there were and like memorize for and then run out to get
Mhm.
those.
Yeah, when he was saying, "Okay, you take those 6 and I'll take these 6," he grabbed those 6. So that's what I said when I first got to the challenge. I was like, "Okay, cool. You take them all with you and you just put them in the order. And then when you go back, you just
Mhm.
put them in the order."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, that seems like the simplest thing. And Diana was like, "There's no way they'll let you take those. That's probably in the, additional notes." And I'm like, "Well, that I mean, that's what my strategy is. Always find the best and fastest way. And if they don't let me, then I'll find another way."
Yeah, ask for forgiveness, not permission, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
that is Rob Mariano status right there. They
Yep.
literally
Yeah.
changed 4 rules in the race because I
Yes.
didn't expect it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I thought it was interesting that you were rewarded for speaking Spanish on this task too, because if you knew what the
Yep.
statue title was.
Oh,
Yeah, we'll get into that with our
Yeah.
next team, which certainly was like one step ahead, right? If you're like, oh, it's a cat, El Gato, great. I don't need to memorize the name because
Yeah.
basically it's just looking at the Spanish translation.
Yeah.
I will say there'll be one film moment to obviously overshadow them all, but I did like low key
Mm,
Phil trying to trick Shalisa and pretty much like getting what he was due when she threatened to whoop his ass.
I mean, it's goals, isn't it?
but Phil, it's like, do you understand the race? Do you understand how it's designed? She literally left and saw 3 people standing there. Like she saw 3 teams still there. You're not going to trick her. She didn't believe she was last. Like she knew exactly where she was. Like you could do that on some other legs where you don't see teams or everybody's not bunched up at a roadblock. But it's like, of all the times to try it, Phil, this was not the time.
I think he's still thrown off from a couple legs ago when Sean and Michelle checked in, and Michelle was so distraught that she thought he had said that they were eliminated, even though he didn't say anything. That I think he's a little bit off his groove, but I think he'll get it back by episode's end.
I'm hoping. I'm hoping.
Okay, I just needed to jump a little bit, shake it back into him.
Well, let's talk about the thing that prognosticated this entire segment here. Yvonne and Melissa got a little bit more screen time this episode. They got none last time. Now they got a little bit. I think Yvonne is those dry types that Jess, that you and I like talking about on The
Mhm.
Amazing Race. Her talking about like how, as someone who's Latin, she's very embarrassed by her dancing performance
Yes.
because, God, if you're talking about the leniency given to Kishori and Karishma, like Yvonne was basically Pinocchio out there just learning to walk.
That was great. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was tough to watch some of these teams dance. And it's like, why did you even try to dance? You have no rhythm. Your body doesn't even work. Like the middle of your body needs to move. What is going on with
Yeah, it's like Derek snapping his fingers.
you? But their invisible edit is something like they either piss somebody off or they're gonna win.
Yeah. I mean, it also seems like the way that they're talking, Jess, that they may not be the most electric TV characters. Like they're very copacetic. They talk about this at the beginning of the episode, like, and they're not exactly pop off your screen people. They're more introverts, it seems. So yeah, unfortunately, I think it's kind of like a recipe for not exactly shown the most, unless you happen to be one of the first teams to showcase a task.
She did the best at the roadblock out of every. They nailed it on their first try. Like,
Yeah. And
show that this team's struggling. Like, and she nails it on the first try. It's like give a little excitement, something there. And
Mm.
if that's the case, then why the hell are they cast if you could just tell how vanilla they are?
I think they're not vanilla so much as they're dry. It's like you said, Mike. And I think sometimes Amazing Race US doesn't know what to do with this. If these people were on Amazing Race Canada, they would be the stars of the show.
Well,
Yeah.
I hope we get to see more of them, because I hate
Yeah.
for people to get to live their dream and they don't have no evidence of it.
Yeah.
Oh no, honestly, this would be best case scenario for me. I want to go on the Amazing Race and run the Amazing Race. I just don't want anybody to see it.
Okay. So
There you
yes,
go.
you'd be happy on this team.
Yeah,
Totally
there are plenty
happy.
of people that want to go on reality shows, and usually it's the opposite. But there are some people that are like, listen, if I could just play Survivor and there were no cameras filming me, like that would be a dream come true. I mean, what's interesting is that I guess fortunately, due to their kind of under the radar edit, it kind of masked the fact that like they fell a large amount during that dance challenge. I think I'm looking at the Clue Black Clue chart they usually do on Reddit the day after. They came into the detour in 4th place and fell all the way to 9th. They were the last team besides Sunny and Busy to leave the detour. So I'm so glad that Yvonne was able to make up some time on that roadblock, significantly so. But yeah, I think we just sort of forget that they did not do well. As much as we're sort of like lambasting Rod and, talking about how difficult it was for Shalissa and kind of laughing at Kishori and Karishma, Yvonne might have been the person to struggle the most with this.
Yeah, that's true. But they definitely made up for it during the roadblock, right? Like, yeah, this is what I'm terrible at, but this is what I'm great at. And you could see both sides of me. And if I could find something that I'm great at, I'm gonna stay in this race. And she did it, nailed it, and stayed there, which is pretty cool. I want to see more about them. Like, I'm curious to learn more about them. So we'll see how it ends. But a lot of times we figure with the 90 minutes that there really shouldn't be any invisible teams anymore, because normally the middle of the pack teams are invisible because there's not enough time. I think now that you have enough time to develop them, but we'll see how it plays out. It's just interesting that 3 of the 4 bottom teams are the female teams.
That is an interesting observation. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
let's keep on that note. And let's talk about Sunny and Busy. And it's interesting because they were sort of like a little bit on the Yvonne and Melissa side last week, not getting the most amount of airtime, but whew, be careful what you wish for, because they got shown with, as we talked about, giving maybe some of the wildest guesses I've seen to a task in Amazing Race history, but then also Jess mounting a very impressive comeback.
I mean, this is why we watch The Amazing Race. Like,
Mhm.
I don't want to see a team just beast their way through all the challenges. I want to see a team pull out of a nosedive in epic fashion the way these two did. Like, this was phenomenal. They screwed up so catastrophically. I was like, this is going to be one of those like Phil comes out to the field and eliminates them moments.
Oh my gosh.
And then they're like, well, we just got to do all the other stuff. We got to be really, really good at it. And then they did that. Like, that was, it was so much fun to watch. I love being surprised. I want to be surprised every week.
Yeah, I would love that. I would absolutely love that, which is why I don't try to look for cues during the episode to figure out what happens, like how dark it is when somebody's doing an interview. Like, you could tell if you want, you could figure out who's going home just by how dark it is when they're doing
or
their
like
interviews.
read their moods as they're saying things too.
Mhm.
See if they were crying. You can kind of always see like there's
Yeah.
like that like tears, like they were crying earlier. Yeah. So if you want to, you can, but I kind of lose some of the fun of watching when I do that. So I try not to anymore.
So do we think that this is a showcase of skills that could give them a chance? Because right now we're sort of talking about, as I mentioned before, like the top 5 teams plus Derek and Shalisa have kind of always finished in that range. Sunny and Busy, they ended up finishing, they've done 9th, 9th, 7th, and 8th. And this is the first scare they really got with getting eliminated. Is this like a sign of, if they have momentum, they can do good things? Or is it more so looking at the first half of the episode of like, they can make really big mistakes that could cost them $1 million?
The boom or bust, right? They're a boom or bust team. If it's in their wheelhouse, they're crushing it. If it's not, watch out.
Yep. High highs and low lows.
Well, one team we surprisingly haven't talked about that much, considering how much main character energy they've had in the other 3 episodes, and considering that they were almost eliminated, that Karishma was one of the bottom 2 people trying to figure out this roadblock alongside Michelle, was able to figure it out a bit over her. I was thinking as the episode went along, Jess, in retrospect, especially like having Karishma talk about, I become this adrenaline junkie after losing my parents, that there was a chance we could get rid of our Chaos Queens early here.
Oh, thank God we didn't. They're so great.
Really? You like them?
There's
I
so
love
much.
them.
I love a hot mess.
Okay,
I
They are
love a
so
disaster
messy.
team.
I gotcha.
And I love a team that has big feelings and that, gets things like same with Sunny and Busy. Like they're getting everything like 100% right or 100% wrong. And we got a great moment at the roadblock that evoked one of my all-time favorites, the "Are you a candelabra" moment, where they go up to the guy and they ask him if he is a name station.
Nameplate. Yeah. Which is wild because
I missed that. I gotta go. I gotta hit that.
yeah,
My
like
rewatch.
Karishma immediately finds the first person she turns to, and it's like, "Excuse me, are you this name guy that I should be looking
You're
to?"
the name station.
Yeah, the name station, which is wild because like candelabra, I guess I could understand maybe that's a word you haven't encountered in your life,
Mhm.
but name station means name station. It
I
does
mean,
not mean man
structurally,
standing
just
there.
just structurally, you can understand that's not a person. Like
To be fair,
candelabra could be like a conductor. Like,
Yeah.
okay, it sounds like something like that, right?
yeah. Are they expecting station from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey?
Oh yeah, I can tell these two are big fans of the works of Bill and Ted.
The works of a movie that came out before they were born.
No, that's more Bailey and Anthony.
Yes.
I was gonna say, yeah, how I'm so true. How old did you feel when Chris was like, "I can do this. I'm a college student."
College.
Yeah.
Jesus, it was like in the 90s.
Yeah,
Beverly
but I
Hills.
would
Oh.
imagine, if we're mapping out who's on the short list to go next, as much
Oh
as
my
I
God.
adore them, they have had so many brushes with death,
Mhm.
right? Like their highest finish, I think, was 8th place.
Eighth, yeah,
And
Yeah.
there'll be 9 teams next week.
10th, 8th, 9th. Yeah, they're definitely next to go. And listen, I hate super fans that go out early. It sucks because you want to live your dream. When then you have somebody who's like, who look like Rod and Leticia. Rod probably never heard of the show until his
Mhm.
wife was like, "Let's go on the show." And he's like, "Competition, let's go." Just like I asked him yesterday, I was like, "You gonna represent us on the challenge?" He goes, "Never heard of it." I'm like, "What?" Okay. And I was like, "Yeah." I think that they're easily the next team out. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be. They're starting in the back. The only thing she talks about that she's really good at is skydiving, which helps you not at
They
all.
just did it. They had it done.
But it doesn't help you at all because you can't solo. Like if you could solo, then sure you can land faster instead of you do more of a free fall and you can get to the ground faster. But you're tandeming, you're going at you don't need to know how to skydive, so it literally doesn't help her at all in the race.
All right. Well, last but not least,
Wow.
Michelle and Sean. So yeah, it was as we talked about before. It was a tale of they were doing pretty good in the dance, obviously having very applicable skills, but it just all came to pieces at the roadblock. But there was the most silver of silver linings as we got to see Theo freaking Kogan do double Dutch jump rope to close out the episode. Like, just I cannot think of a recent Amazing Race episode closing moment that made me smile more than this.
Yeah, it was pretty cute. It was pretty fun. I mean, Phil, he's up for anything. You just have to give him a little nudge and I don't know. I love the energy that these two had. They had huge personalities. I see why casting wanted them on here.
Yeah,
And
I
I'm glad we got them for the 4 episodes we did.
They seem like awesome people.
They are. They're so great.
I'd love to have them in the Amazing Race family. I just wish that they would have prepared better.
There's not much they could have done beyond. I asked them about preparing, and I think the only thing they could have done in hindsight was become fans of the Amazing Race 5 years sooner.
Right. They basically said that Sean had watched a few episodes, but when they were asked, they binged as much as they could. But obviously, that doesn't compare to just doing a voluminous amount of like, well, I know the race, so I know how to do these specific steps to prep for it.
Right. Like,
yeah.
They learned how to, like, they would not be a team that went out on not knowing how to drive stick shift, for example. And they both learned how to swim, and they did a lot of that. They did a lot of those little like skill practice things, and they discussed how they would strategize, like who would do which roadblocks and what kind of detours they would take. But it's the one time I think I've seen a team go out because they didn't really know the show as well as the other teams. Like, I think, and Justin, this is a thing that I'm always curious to find out when I talk to a racer who was a deep fan before they went on the show, because I think we all know that more people on the show are huge fans than the show ever tells you.
Yeah.
But I struggle to think of times when I feel like somebody being a huge fan of the show. I think maybe this week and last week are the only two times I can think of teams that really, their success on the race was on the back of them being a fan.
Well, I think it all depends on the type of fan, I guess.
Yeah.
Because if you could be a fan of the show and love the show and know all the teams, but don't understand why they won or why they were bad. So that's a different type of fan. Knowing that, okay, well, the Afghanimals got screwed because the team had an alliance or whatever, things like knowing those little things, or okay, that Jason and Amy are the only team that ever got refused a roadblock because of weather. Like knowing those little things, it's like, okay, those can kind of help you, and those can kind of hurt you if you don't understand that. The way the Amazing Race is structured, it's like, okay, it's usually a physical task and a brain task. It's usually the things that you can do. And if you're a physical team, go do the physical task. If you're a brain team, go do the brain task. If there's a judge, always go do the other task. So like you want to know these like little things. Like, oh, you look at, as soon as you see a detour, you know the types of detours they are and which one you should generally pick depending on your skill set. And I think those little things, like what the super fans are like, the ones who watch it as I'm going to be a future racer, as opposed to ones who watch it and be like, this is the best show.
That's
I mean, it's the difference between an Adam Klein versus a Banu, right, Mike?
Yeah, exactly. It's encyclopedic knowledge versus experiential knowledge, I would say, of like what gets applied to the race versus, oh, I know this statistic. She also mentioned, though, Sean told me in his exit interview that the Amazing Race officially cured his fear of heights. He said that he went skydiving for his recent birthday. So, like, he is completely fine with heights now, thanks to the Amazing Race. So yeah, he did have that moment up on the hill, but now that he's over the hill, he's able to do a lot of awesome things. Michelle also apparently had like a big fear of dogs, and because there are dogs just running rampant around Mexico and Colombia, she was able to kind of conquer that fear too. So again, as much as we maybe tongue-in-cheek refer to these teams that are like, well, I walked away the true winner if I didn't win the $1 million, these two were able to cure like pretty detracting fears in their lives at the end of the day.
Well, that's awesome. And they got the word out about, Double Dutch and their business, and they're awesome people, and you can find them on YouTube. It doesn't help as much as the other shows, like, because you get, tens of thousands of people from that. But I like their personality. I like that they were happy, and, not grumpy about it. They kept positive attitude on the race, and I love that. It's hard for me to do, but I respect and appreciate when other people are able to do that. But to me, it almost makes you seem like you don't care enough to win. If you're like, oh, well, we lost, and for me, like if you can't see it in somebody's face that they're hurt from losing, then they didn't come to win.
Well, the good news is we talk about preparation for the race. One major skill set is about to get tested next week as our trip to Chile comes with stick shift.
Self-drive stick shift. Oh, I love those. Love them. My favorite legs. And that's one cool thing about the COVID seasons is I think there's going to be a lot more self-drives because they don't want them in taxis and buses and things like that. So hopefully from here on out, there's a lot more self-drives. I understand why they didn't do it in Medellin, because there is still some safety issues that you have to worry about there. But going forward, Rod and Leticia winning the first two legs, Ricky and Caesar winning the second two legs. Who's winning the next leg?
I need to see somebody new win a leg. I mean, no disrespect to the teams that have already won, but there's a reason we don't go back and rewatch season 9.
Yeah. I mean, I can imagine like an opportunity for Juan and Shane to take the lead. It's tough because, again, with these departure times, if you have 2 to 3 teams with an ingrained 15-minute lead, unless they really struggle in a task or one team super excels at a task, like there's a chance that one of those teams is going to win the leg. I could see if Juan and Shane get the right task. It seems like they have a good, calm mindset that they could finish in first. It might be a good day for someone like Derek and Shalisa or even Rod and Leticia. I agree, though. I want to see a little bit of variance here. As much as I love Ricky and Cesar and how they become these unconventional overdogs for the season, it's good to have those overdogs challenged a little bit.
Yeah, in a way. I mean, as a fan, I can understand you want to see some diversity in the winners of the legs, but I also like to see greatness. I like to see people who studied, who did their homework, who prepared for the race, I like to see that rewarded. And I like to watch that play out. Like, I mean, as much as I hated Michael Jordan growing up because I'm a Knicks fan, like I got
I'm
to see
sorry.
him play live at Madison Square Garden. I did that. Like I was one of those people that I got to see him play. And I it's something different. It's like I was there for that era. I watched his whole, like I got to see that. And then I think I get that a lot with the race. And I guess because I look at it a little different than the average fan, but I like to see greatness. I like to see their preparation rewarded. And especially for a team like Ricky and Caesar, who teams not, I can't say many people, your son is awesome, but I can't say many people pick them to win the race beforehand. But you better put some respect on their name now.
Oh, they like even if they went out next week, they'd still be, if I was casting an all-star season, they'd be a lock.
Yeah, they'd be the Robin, Amber, and All-Stars team, right?
Yeah.
Pretty much. I mean, they
Yeah.
have a great personality. They're strong racers. They're awesome teammates. And I wouldn't mind seeing them back if they don't win.
Yeah, I think they're fantastic. And I think if we are going to have like one team dominate, at least it's that team, right?
Yeah, and they're the best dressed. So come on.
Oh yeah. That's why George picked him. He loves their shirts.
Sometimes that's all it takes.
That's all it takes. All right. Well, I think, do we have any parting thoughts on the episode before we start putting this to bed? Or have we exhausted all venues?
No, from Escalator Dog to Baby Rat, we went through all the animals this episode.
Yes,
Certainly
lots of animals. I hope it's going to pick up from here. I don't think it's been off to the strongest start like Amazing Race could be, or has been, especially after last season, which I thought was awesome to watch. But there are some dynamic teams that I enjoy watching. So I hope those teams, if those teams are able to stick around longer, I think this could get better as it goes along, because you just narrow down now all the screen time is going to be on those teams that you want to see. So I'm hoping that that's the case. But it's Amber and Vinny or Ricky and Caesar. I think those are the two that have the chance at finishing 1 and 2 in whatever order.
I think of everybody that's left, I think so. But
yeah,
I could give an outside chance to like a Derek and Shalisa, because they have been pretty consistent and they're entertaining. They're getting a lot of screen time. If I'm reading the edit, I like them up in front. But there's always also a team that we don't see for the entire race that ends up in the top 3, and who knows which team that will be.
Yeah, Yvonne and Melissa might go the roller doobery moms route, where we're like, oh wait, how'd they get here?
Oh, yes. Are they still here? Okay.
Like, wow. But a couple things to pay attention to. Danny and Angie. Danny's done 3 of the 4 roadblocks, so Angie's going to have to start doing them. And the same thing happens with Sunny and Busy. They're 3 and 1, and Juan and Shane. So, like, you have to pay attention to balancing out those roadblocks, because you don't want to be forced to have someone do a roadblock that they have no skills at. So try to get them out early. Get your partner those roadblocks early. I think they're doing it the wrong way now. We're overdosing the stronger person early just so they can stay in. It's like early is when you have the most chances to mess up. So you want the weaker person to do all those challenges, so you save up the stronger person for later. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Something we don't keep good enough track of that, for sure. This is why we have you on. Nerds. So Justin, tell us about Races Recap a little bit.
Well, Races Recap is just it's a show that I have been doing ever since my season, because there wasn't many places that I could go to learn about the race.
These jackasses weren't helpful.
No, certainly not.
To hear about behind the scenes, like, there was AfterBuzz TV, there was you guys, and Reality TV Warriors. Like, there was a couple people, but now the resources are incredible. I wanted to create a show, the Races Recap. If you want to be on the Amazing Race, I give you all of the information you ever need to win. There is no place else you need to go besides our show if you're trying to be on the race and win. It's all former racers. Everybody who's on the show is finished in the top 3. We all understand the race and we look at it a different way, and we give you the little tips and tricks that help you win the race, like bringing 1 backpack. Don't ever bring 2 backpacks. Just stop. Like, just simple things like that.
You heard it here first. If you think you have what it takes to apply for the Amazing Race, check out Racers Recap podcast.
Oh,
That was
nailed
perfect.
it, Mike. That was beautiful.
Well done.
Yeah, Mike
I
Bloom,
did
what are
li-
you up to this week?
Well, talked with Michelle and Sean, as mentioned before. That was a really fun chat. Again, like the energy level, I usually do the written version and the video as well. Really recommend the video in particular because their energy level was just so immaculate, such great vibes, and such a fun couple to talk to. Also spoke with the person most recently voted out of Survivor, doing the B&B this weekend, maybe doing a couple of other interviews along the way. I will tease that the Challenge All-Stars, Justin's future show, is coming back next week, and I talked with one of said all-stars. That interview should be out before the season. No matter what I'm doing, you can follow what I'm doing on the interwebs at a Mike Bloom type on all platforms.
When is the interview with the team eliminated from the Amazing Race? When is that?
God, it got released earlier today. It's up on parade.com.
Oh,
Yep. My own interview with them is already out on RHAPswebsite.com as well, and in all of your feeds. Probably the same feed with which you are listening to this very podcast. You've probably already heard it, but if you haven't, it is there. And of course, you can find me on all the platforms at Hey Baker Hattie. And
awesome.
yes,
I
thank you
appreciate
so
you guys.
much.
Thank you
Thank
for
you so
having
much
me
for
on.
coming
No,
on.
this was so
Justin.
awesome. We should also announce Exit Press, I believe, is happening on Friday next
Yes,
week due to
we'll
schedule
be-
for the team. So we'll actually do the podcast first next week for a change.
That'll be interesting. We won't be able to keep going back to like, I wonder why. We'll be wondering a lot more things. It'll be good.
All right. Check
And
out
also-
racersrecap.com. Friday nights, 8:00. I changed it. I used to do it on Sunday. So Friday nights at 8. I really
There
appreciate
you
it.
go.
Yeah. What else are any of you nerds doing on Friday night anyway?
Yeah, nerds, let's go.
Yep. We also want to put a plug out for our Facebook group that is
Yes.
seeing robust nonsense in traffic. It's called Amazing Race on RHAP, and you can also get there by going to robhasawebsite.com/tar group, and that gets you right to the Facebook group, so you can join it and join us for all of our nonsense.
Yeah, we're almost at 650 members right now.
Which is wild. It's like twice as many as girls who like hiking.
Well, we'll see. Maybe if Yvonne and Melissa are able to make their way in there, you can be a part of both. But yeah, we got discussions about current episodes, people sharing their own Amazing Race S trips that they make of like, oh, I'm going to Cambodia. I'm going to go to the place that the race usually goes. So fun talk about Amazing Race past, present, and future.
It's good stuff. All right. Well, thanks once again to Justin, and thanks, of course, to Mike for bringing the breakdancing vibes.
Yes.
Oh, it's the DVD. I didn't even know there was a
That's
DVD.
the
of it.
DVD. Yes.
It's beautiful. Season 27
proud.
DVD. Ah, so proud. That's super awesome. That was one of the seasons I feel like as a podcaster was very fun to cover. Like just because we had so much. Oh, well, okay, you know what? If we're doing this,
Oh,
There we go.
nice.
All the visual companions. This is why you need to watch the video, people.
Whoa, yeah, I'm not even going to tell you what she's showing, but she is showing some skin right now. You
If
better
you
come
want to
and
find
watch.
out what it is, you can check it out. RHAPsawebsite.com/YouTube to not miss a second of the videos we have happening.
Yeah,
You're about to get banned. You're about to get banned, Jess. You better put that away.
dude. You know, I told you I love The Amazing Grace. That's how much.
Woo! That should be in the VIP section to see that.
That's Amazing Grace After Dark.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. And of course, thanks to everybody behind the scenes that makes this all happen. We'll see you guys next week.